Hello, welcome to the second section of this audio class on how to become a published author. In this second section, we'll be discussing 10 practical steps to writing a book. And I'll begin by saying that you have the ability right now to write and publish a book on a subject that is important to you, just like riding a bicycle, playing the keyboard, how to cook your favorite soup. Learning how to write a book is a skill that you can master with practice and repetition. According to a popular US magazine called USA Today, 82% of adults dream of writing a book someday, either to express a heartfelt concern about a subject or to earn a living and even become successful. Many books are written by people who are not particularly good at writing. Instead, they hire a writer for hire who interviews them, takes notes on their ideas and insights, and then works it into a book which they go on to publish under their own name. Many of the best-selling books on the New York Times lists were not written by the person whose name appears on the cover. They were written by other writers. There are more than 200,000 books published each year, and yours can be one of them. The key to writing a book is just to write. Writing is one thing that you cannot get worse at by doing it. Albert Hubbard, one of the most prolific writers in American history, was once asked the key to successful writing. He replied, "The only way to learn to write is to write and write and write and write and write." For me, I fantasized about writing a book for many years until I decided to just write. I have identified and outlined 10 steps that anyone can follow to become an author and a published author. The first step is start with a message, idea, or story that you really want to share with other people. The truth is that there is a message that you have, there is an idea that you have, there is a story only you can tell. Start with it. This must be something for which you have a passion, something that you believe in. One of the best definition of a writer is a person who cannot not write. Someone who cannot just, you know, have a few day if he or she has not written something for the day. So you may be wondering, what am I going to write on? Look within you. There is something you are always out to pass across to people. Most times when you are in an argument, there is a message you want to pass across. Most times when you are in the midst of your friends, there's something you want to drive through. There's something you want to prove. There is a point you always want to make. That is a story to start with. That is your message. That is an idea. That is where you start from. Start with a message, idea, or story that you really want to share with other people. It has to be something for which you are passionate about. You believe in it. The truth is, you cannot write a book on something you do not believe in, on something you are not passionate about. So you must be passionate about it for you to start. That is the first step. So that is the first practical step to writing a book. Start with your message. Start with your idea. Start with your story. The second step is you must be an expert on your subject. It's as simple as that. You must know 10 words for every word you write. Or the reader will know that you are talking off the top of your head. Or the reader will know that, man, this guy is not making sense. You must be an expert on your subject. If you want to write on love, you must be an expert in the art of love. If you want to write a book on how to ride a bicycle, you must be an expert in riding a bike. You must have 10 words or know 10 words for every word you write. You must master your synonyms. If you want to write on success, you must already be successful. If you write on money, you must already be rich. If you write on relationships, you must be happily married. You must be an expert on your subject. The third step of getting to write a book, you must buy, read, and find out everything you can about other authors. books, or articles dealing with the same subject. Make sure that your material is different and better than other people writing in your field in at least three ways. You know, what contribution are you going to make? But in reality, books are actually repetitions of knowledge. There is really no new knowledge you're going to bring out that someone has not written about. But in your own book, what is your own angle about it? What are you bringing to the table? What did the other person highlight that you are trying to put more light on or try to explain more about? So make sure your material is different and better than other people writing in your field in at least three ways. Gather all the information that you will need to write your book. Do your research and homework before you start to write. Paul Johnson, one of the best writers in the world today, describes how he gathers 1,500 pieces of information and then organizes them from beginning to end in a logical structure before he begins writing a book on any subject. To write an excellent non-fiction book, you will have to have a lot of information available to you. The fourth step on writing a book: organize your material into 7, 10, 12, or 21 chapters, each following in a logical order from beginning to end. When I began writing a book, when I began writing my first book titled I Challenge, 10 ways that you're qualified to succeed, I started with my sermon notes. I preach. So I picked up my sermon notes, and what I do with my sermon notes is that I write down what I'm going to preach, usually word for word, and I practice on it. I study, I make my research, I consult all sorts of information. Then I start preparing my sermons and I put them together, and it helps me organize. So when I started my book, I went back to my sermon notes. I started picking up. I picked this sermon, pick this, pick this, pick this, the ones that are actually following a particular line of thought. And it formed a book. And each of them formed a chapter for me. So thinking in terms of a number of chapters forces you to decide what will be contained in each chapter and how each of the chapters will be organized in relationship to each other. Once you have a chapter title, of course, you're going to give each chapter a title. So once you have a chapter title, you get yourself a legal size writing pad or an exercise book or any of your electronic devices in your phone, smartphones, tablets, iPad, iPhones, and all that. And you start jotting down every key point that you could think of that could possibly be included in that particular chapter. I call this the down dump. As you begin to write the points that should be included in this chapter, more ideas will occur to you. You will often find yourself writing 2, 3, and 4 pages of material with dozens of ideas that fall under the chapter heading. Once you have written down all the material for each of your chapters, begin with chapter 1 and organize your points from the first point through to the closing part of the chapter. The fifth step to writing a book: you may want to use a mind map to create a visual picture of each chapter. To do this, you take a blank sheet of paper, preferably a large sheet, and put a circle in the middle of the page. Inside this circle, you write the title of the chapter. You then draw a line outward toward the edges of the page, and at the edge of each line, draw a circle which will stand for a major subject to be covered in this page. You then draw lines out from each of these core lines upon which you write the subpoints covered under that heading. By the time you are finished, you will have your entire chapter laid out in front of you, very much like a brain cell with ganglia connecting it to the other brain cells. Begin with chapter 1 and dictate the book in the order of the material you have chosen. Begin with your first point, a strong statement that makes a point and arouses interest in the reader in reading further. Dictating your book is one of the most powerful exercises I have ever discovered and dramatically increases the speed at which you create your initial manuscript. When you dictate, you are forced to write in a conversational tone of voice. This adds warmth, cushion, care to your material and makes it easier and more enjoyable to read for the reader. The sixth point, the sixth step in writing a book. Once you have dictated the entire book, chapter by chapter, give it to a typist and have the typist type it out and give it back to you by email or in a flash drive or burn it into a CD. If for any reason you are not now using a computer for your writing, you must begin immediately because it is easier and faster and more efficient for you to use a computer if you want to write. If you have not yet learned to touch type, immediately purchase. If you have not learned how to type on a computer, there are many resources that can help you do that. You mustn't be an expert, but there are resources in the market that can help you do that. One of them is the one called Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing. By following this course, perhaps you can find it in one of any of the dealers on softwares in the market or any computer dealer. By following this course on this CD, perhaps the most popular in the world for 30 minutes each day, by following this course for at least 30 minutes each day, you will be touch typing and fluent with Microsoft Word within 60 to 90 days. And that's even on a high scale. Within 30 days, you should be very fluent with Microsoft Word if you make use of Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing. You can look for it. It's very user friendly. So when you do that, you set up a work schedule and create blocks of time consisting of 2, 3, or 4 hours each. Put everything aside and discipline yourself to sit at your keyboard and edit your material during this time. Usually, the preferable time for me to do this activity is usually in the night when every other person had gone to sleep. The atmosphere is serene. At that point, my mind is clear. I don't find it easy to write in the morning. I find it easy to write in the night when I had slept and woken up in the night. That is for me. So for you, choose an appropriate time, an appropriate moment for you to do this. And when you do this, create a space in your home or apartment. Get yourself a desk and a proper setup. You need silence in which to work and do good editing. Silence is very key. The seventh step in writing a book. When you must have created this space and done all that, the typist had typed it out and you're ready to edit. The seventh step now entails that you begin editing the entire book from the first word to the last word the first time. As you edit, correct the grammar and typing errors, of which there will be many. Create the necessary paragraphs, each one containing a single thought. The first edit is the longest and the hardest job of editing in the whole book. In your second edit, break up the text with a heading every 2, 3, or 4 paragraphs. This makes your writing bite-sized and easy to read. Write an introduction, a preface, and if necessary, acknowledgements for the book. Now, let me explain this segment of a book. A preface explains why you are writing this book and why it is important Sometimes you can get someone else to write the preface for you on why you are writing the book and why it is important for someone to pick the book and read it. The introduction part of the book explains to the reader the importance of this subject and what he or she will gain from reading the following book. Now, your acknowledgement talks about if other people have helped you in writing the research or the publication of the book, people are very flattered to be acknowledged in a book and see their name in print. So this is where you mention every person who had acknowledged you in one way or the other, who had helped you, contributed in one way or the other in making the book a reality. In your third edit, place a quote at the beginning of each chapter. It helps. If it is a self-help or educational book of some kind, create 2, 3, 5, or even 7 action steps at the end of each chapter. When you write an action step, always begin with an imperative verb, a command. For example, you could say, write down 3 goals that you intend to accomplish within the next 30 days. The 8th step in writing a book. In your 4th edit, which will take much less time than the earlier edits, this is where you begin to polish the sentences. You start deleting unnecessary material and make final corrections. You'll be surprised at the amount of information you are going to do away with. Trust me. In your 5th and often final edit, you completely reread the entire book line by line from cover to cover. You will be amazed at the number of small mistakes that you pick up, even though you have already been through the book from beginning to end 4 separate times. The key to editing is that you must be satisfied with your work. You must feel that there is nothing more that you can do to improve it. Sometimes you will have to rewrite the book 6 or 7 times or even more. O.G. Mandino, who wrote The Greatest Salesman in the World, sold millions of copies, once said in his book that he wrote each book 13 to 15 times. He said that my books are easy to read because they are so hard to write. The final step to writing a book, not the final step, the 9th step. The entire process of writing a book, as described above, as I've pointed out, requires 50 to 100 hours of intense, focused work. After you have gathered all your material for the book, sometimes the idea of writing 200 to 300 pages, investing more than 100 hours, is overwhelming to a person, which I am sure you must have screamed, say, wow, where will I find such a time? My schedule is so tight. But this is the reason why so many books go unwritten throughout history. So if you want to have a book written in your name, you must be ready to make some sacrifice. But several friends of mine facing this dilemma have discovered that they could go to bed early, arise early, and write 1 page per day. So if you write 1 page per day, you'll be having a book ready to go to the publisher within 12 months, which might be too long a time for you. So you can step it up and say 2 pages per day. So you have a book ready in 6 months. You can say 3 pages per day. You can have a book ready in, say, 3 months if you are targeting to write 200 to 300 pages of a book. But for me, I try to bit size my books from 80 to 150 pages. If I have any other information to offer, I'll package it and make another book out of it. Always play gentle classical music, non-vocal, in the background when you are working. Best of all, get stereo headphones and listen to classical music while you work. This one has worked for me perfectly, and I recommend it to anyone. What I discovered is that your brain burns out when you write or edit for 2 or 3 hours. But when you wear musical headphones, you can work much longer. And when you finish, you will still be alert and creative. Finally, finally, the most important quality that you need for success as a writer, apart from your genuine ability to write on a subject that is of interest to a large number of people, is persistence. You must be prepared to write and 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 write. If you persist long enough and hard enough, you will eventually become a published author, and you may become one of the great writers of your generation. I challenge every young person listening to me right now that the world is waiting for you to write. These 10 steps I've outlined, I have practiced them, I've put them into practice every book I have written. And I promise you that if you replay this audio recording over and over again and take a pen and paper and jot down these steps, you'll find amazing steps that you can develop for yourself into becoming a published author. I know you are one already because you have the ability inside of you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating in this class. Stay tuned for the next section, which will tell us how to turn your books, how to turn your blogs or your journals into a book. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned.